Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce.
The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
Evening. I will open the meeting of the Falmouth Select Board. It is Monday, May 1st. It is exactly 6 o'clock. And I will entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to contract negotiations with non-union personnel, town manager.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Brown, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Scott Price, aye.
Zelinski, aye.
Taylor, aye, and we will return to open session at 6:30. I just love banging that gavel. I would like to reopen the meeting of the Falmouth Select Board. It is Monday, May 1st, 2023. It is 6:34 p.m., and the board is returning from executive session where we discuss strategy with respect to contract negotiations with non-union personnel, town manager, and I believe we have a contract that we have agreed upon. So I'm going to ask two things. Please silence your cell phones during this meeting, and if you are audio or video recording this public meeting, please notify me as chair. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all. I'm going to take a few things out of order tonight, but we will start with our proclamations. Would anyone like to read the proclamations? Mr. Patterson, would you like to read one?
I'll read one.
Okay.
How about that? This is a proclamation for Police Week, which starts, is it the week of May 15th?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, yeah, so it's, the Congress and President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officer Memorial Day and the week in which it falls Police Week. And whereas the members of the law enforcement agency of the town of Falmouth play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of citizens of the town of Falmouth, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the problems, duties, and responsibilities of their police department, and that members of our police department recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence or disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression or intimidation. And whereas the police department of the town of Falmouth has grown to be a modern and scientific law enforcement agency which unceasingly provides a vital public service, therefore we, the Select Board, call upon all the citizens of the town of Falmouth and upon all patriotic, civil, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 14th through the 20th, 2023 as Police Week, with appropriate ceremonies in which all of our people may join in commemorating police officers past and present who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities and in so doing have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. Further, We call upon all citizens of the town of Falmouth to observe Wednesday, May 17th, 2023, as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of those peace officers who, through their courageous deeds, have lost their lives or have become disabled in the performance of duty, especially our own officer Samuel F. Pierce, who lost his life in the line of duty on August 16, 1933. I further call upon all citizens of the town of Falmouth to observe a moment of silence on Wednesday, May 17, 2023, in their honor. In witness thereof, we, Nancy R. Taylor, Angela Scott Price, Samuel H. Patterson, Douglas C. Brown, and Edwin Scott P. Zielinski II have hereunto set our hand and caused the great seal of the town of Falmouth to be affixed on this first day of May 2023.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. With great thanks to the Falmouth Police Department. Please, thank you.
Falmouth Community Television 30th Anniversary. Whereas, the open sharing of ideas and information helps to build shared understanding and encourage civic engagement. And whereas, access to information in today's media environment is critical for the healthy functioning of our community. And whereas, Falmouth Community Television provides a means for diverse communities to share and build their stories. And whereas, FCTV provides information that is not covered by mainstream commercial media. And whereas FCTV ensures equity and access, empowering the community with the skills necessary for the creation, sharing, and consumption of knowledge and ideas through media. And whereas FCTV is an essential resource for public participation in local democracy, ensuring transparency in government through live, unedited coverage of municipal meetings. And whereas FCTV provides timely, critical local information to promote public health and safety during emergencies. And whereas FCTV connects community organizations, schools, and local governments to their constituents. And whereas, for 30 years, FCTV has fostered the creation and distribution of hyperlocal media, serving as a vital repository of our town's culture and history. Now, therefore, be it resolved that June 2023 is hereby proclaimed as Falmouth Community Television Month within Falmouth, and all people are hereby called upon to promote the importance of media training and local programming available on FCTV channels and online distribution platforms. And be it further resolved that Falmouth Community Television plays a vital role in the building of our community by encouraging conversations about our common interests, increasing discourse around policy issues, fostering understanding of local cultures, and sharing information to improve our lives. In witness whereof, we, Nancy R. Taylor, Angela Scott Price, Samuel H. Patterson, Douglas C. Brown, and Edwin Scott P. Zielinski II, have hereunto set our hand and caused the great seal of the town of Falmouth to be affixed on this first day of May 2023.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And again, a huge thanks to FCTV.
Congratulations.
Okay, I'm going to skip over recognition, and I'm going to go to announcements. Any announcements from the board?
I have one, Madam Chair.
Yes.
So unfortunately, there was a structural issue in the aquarium down in Woods Hole, and it's going to be closed for at least 3 months while that's being prepared. So I've been asked to just inform the public of that sad news, that the aquarium will not be open for a while.
Ooh.
And all the offices that are upstairs, a lot of people don't know there's offices upstairs. Those offices are closed, and all those employees have to work from home as well. So there's a lot of work that has to be done there.
Ouch. Any other announcements? Okay. Public comment. Public comment may be made on routine matters not on the agenda this evening. Comments are limited to 2 minutes. Please introduce yourself. And since the matter has not been included on the agenda, the Select Board will not participate in any discussion of your topic. Anyone here for public comment? Dr. Schneider.
I would like to just point out that today, 12 years ago, we opened the Falmouth Dog Park, and we have had a very successful dog.
Being a dog lover, that's huge.
And just to put in perspective, if you took an average, right now we're around 35,000 dog visits a year. If you take an average of 25,000, that means we've had well over 300,000 dog visits going on there, keeping those dogs somewhere safe and somewhere fun and not on the beaches. And that's a reminder that today is No Dogs on the Beach Day.
May 1.
But you can always come to the dog park. Thank you. And thank you to everybody in this town that's made that work, both donors, all the businesses, over 100 businesses. We really appreciate all that everyone does. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb.
Anyone else for public comment? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Moriarty.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Dave Moriarty, Falmouth, Massachusetts resident. I just want to bring to everyone's attention, all the citizens of town, that the Energy Facility Siting Board has just given its update to the Department of Public Utilities, and the town of Falmouth and citizens of Falmouth are still negotiating with the cable company. And that's happening, between the developer and the town of Falmouth and its citizens, according to what's in the
Mr. Moriarty, would you
Energy
address the
Facility
board?
Siting Board.
Address the board, please.
And I think it's time that we update the citizens, we form a citizen committee, and we stay ahead of this project, and we don't ever get behind, because these people haven't been honest brokers since the beginning. They've been lying to numerous towns up and down the East Coast. This isn't just happening in Falmouth, it's happening in a lot of other towns on the East Coast of our country. And so it's time that the citizens in the town stay ahead of this, because does the town of Falmouth really need another decade of lawsuits? The last energy project was a complete disaster. And let's do something, let's be proactive, and let's not get caught with our pants down on this one, because we have plenty of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moriarty. Anyone else for public comment? Yes.
Hi, my name is Paula Medor. I live on Cutter Drive in East Falmouth. I'd like an explanation, if you could give me that quickly. It's about our election in the Times. I understand that the major elections are the first Tuesday in November. So now I'm starting to see political signs, so for school board and for select board. So when is that election?
We can't.
May 16th, all right. And is it always that then? They are never, during the Tuesday in November election, then they're always May 16th? Or,
Around that time.
okay. Second Tuesday of May? Yes. Oh, okay, all fine, all right. I moved here in 2004, and I was raised in Brockton, so things were done differently, and I just retired in 2018, and I'm finally getting to come out to these meetings and understand how this beautiful town truly works. All right, and I just had one more, and I bet it's going to go right out the window. Okay, I asked you about school board, I asked you about... and we're called precincts, right? Not wards, but precincts. Okay. And finally, why do we have 8 precincts, is that correct?
We can't really have a conversation during public comment.
Oh, I thought it was 2 minutes for some general question.
You have 2
All right.
minutes on public comment for each person, but you could certainly call the town manager's office or any of us, and we could sort of walk you through
That would be great.
what it looks like.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Okay, seeing none. All right, we're going to go to committee interviews, and then I'm going to go back up to our open session piece. So we will start with the Affirmative Action Committee, and I believe we have 3 applicants. So
Correct, Madam Chair. We have
Please.
3 candidates and 3 vacancies.
okay. And let's hear from Amy Bauer first, please. Come right up to the podium.
More.
Whoa,
There it is. There's a microphone there. Oh, okay. Thank you. Hello.
hi. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure,
And
yeah.
your interest in this committee?
Sure. My name's Amy Bauer. I'm a scientist at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. Have been a resident since 1988 in Falmouth. And in my experience, my professional experience, I've had several opportunities to learn about diversity, equity, and inclusion issues, and actually lead through some hiring and DEI and affirmative action situations. I've been a department chair. So I've gained quite a bit of experience in my professional life, and I'm interested in sharing that with the town to make it a better place to live and work. And personally, I've raised a child of color in Falmouth too, so I'm sort of personally aware of some of the issues facing minorities. And plus, I'm a minority myself, in a minority group myself as a blind person.
Any questions from the board?
I think, seems like a pretty good explanation of why she wants to be on the board.
Oh, did I say? Oh, yeah, that I wanted to share. I did say why. I don't know if I answered the question.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
Gina Mapp.
Hello, good evening. I'm Chena Mapp, and I am excited about working with this committee and seeing it come back to life and to action. So I am a resident of the town as of September 2021, and I want to do my part.
Great. Questions? Gina Mapp?
We know Gina.
We do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Gina. And Melaine Chiato? Chiato. Ooh, I like that. Come up.
So my name is Milene Chioato. I'm a social worker here in town. I work at the Community Health Center, Cape Cod, in the Falmouth office. I'm a resident since 1998 in Falmouth, and I'm also a member of the Falmouth Human Services Committee. And I serve the Brazilian population and also the Spanish-speaking population as a social worker at the health center, and I know their needs, and I hope that can be that I can help them if I participate in the committee.
Great. Thank you. Any questions?
No, it's quite a resume you have there, so
Indeed.
thank you.
Thanks for your service.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I would move Milene Chiato. I hope I said that right, to a.
Kyoto. Kyoto?
Can you say it for me one more time?
Oh, my name, your last name. Milene Chioato, like a
Chioato.
Chioato.
Chioato. That's beautiful. For an unexpired term ending June 30th, 2024.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more conversation amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
I'd like to move Amy Bauer to a term ending June 30th, 2025.
Second again.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
And lastly, I'd like to move Gina Mapp for a term ending June 30th, 2025.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further conversation? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you all for your
Thank you.
willingness to serve.
Thank you.
Okay, and now I'd like to move backwards to recognitions. Ms. Scott Price.
So tonight, we'd like to recognize Samuel H. Patterson for his many years on the Select Board. Sam, thank you for your service on this board. I know you're not necessarily going anywhere, but you've put in a lot on this board. I've learned a lot from you over the years, even before I got a chance to be on the board. And you're definitely going to leave a hole that we won't be able to fill by any one person. But I'm sure we'll carry a lot of what we've learned with us as we continue. So thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Sam, while we certainly didn't agree all the time, I have the utmost respect for you and your commitment to this town and the people of the town, and I respect you a great deal for that.
Thank you.
And I will say that I think you've done amazing work with housing, certainly supporting our schools, and with renewable energy. And I think we've all learned quite a bit from you. So I want to thank you for that. And I know you're not going anywhere, and I'll be sending the minutes to you by email for you to check. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Sam, it has definitely been an honor and a pleasure to serve with you, and I've learned a lot from you as well. And you've shared so many different aspects of your career and how they've been relevant to this board in so many different ways. You will definitely be hard shoes to fill, so thank you so much.
Thanks very much for that.
Okay, and to celebrate, no.
This is brief.
Okay, just give me 1 second. To celebrate you, Sam, we are going to go into recess for 10 minutes after you speak, because we have cake and a plant, and we have a certificate for you. So you can speak, and then I'll put us into recess. Go ahead.
No, I just want to thank the citizens of Falmouth for giving me the opportunity to serve them. It's was 16 years in the school committee, and just now finishing 9 years as a select board member. And this is a phenomenal town. And I just respect you all, and thank you all for giving me the opportunity to serve. And I hope that I have brought some constructive change and guidance as part of my tenure. So thanks very much. It's a special place.
Thank you, Sam. And the board will recess for 10 minutes. We're just in a 10-minute recess to celebrate Sam Patterson. So we will move on to our business, and we have a presentation on the water rate study.
So, Madam Chair, while
Yes, please.
they are coming up to the microphone, I'll just offer a few introductory comments. Water Department representatives and Peter McConerty, DPW Director, is getting up to the podium. They will be presenting the results of a study prepared with consulting assistance that identifies all costs associated with treating and delivering potable water. And then the study looks at potential changes to the water rates based on these costs. I do want to mention that the slides you're going to see tonight have been updated from those that are in your packet. And what we are seeking tonight is initial feedback from the board in preparation for a water rate hearing that could be as early as May 22nd.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson-Staub. Mr. McConerty?
Good evening, Peter McConerty, Director of Public Works. Last week's Select Board's meeting, we had our interim water superintendent and our consultant, Tater and Howard, do a presentation of our capital efficiency plan, which was a great outline, showed the report, was a great outline of the work that needs to be done for keep our water department and piping most efficient. And tonight we'd like to talk about how we're going to pay for that. So what I would like to say is that with me tonight, I have Mike Schrader with Tater and Howard as our consultant. Steve Carteret is our deputy director. Steve Rafferty is everyone knows Steve Rafferty is our former water superintendent. What we're going to discuss tonight, it says water and sewer rate evaluation. We're going to discuss water. We don't want to discuss sewer. We're not looking to adjust the sewer rates at this time. What we're looking to do is we're looking to change the structure of our water and how our billing works through our public works to make it easier for us and make us to be more of a standard with the American Water Works Association and all the other cities and towns. So with that, the wastewater might change a little bit because their rate structure is going to match our rate structure, but we're not looking to change the rates on the sewer. This is just for water. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mike Schrader.
Good evening. I am going to get through this quickly, try to stay on time here. So thank you, Peter, for the introduction. As you all know, Falmouth owns and operates a public water system. What's a little bit interesting is it serves almost the entire town. There's not a large portion that's unserved. And as you heard last week, the water system needs major capital investments to maintain the necessary level of service. And I wasn't here for that presentation, but I would think that that is what they're doing, is maintaining a level of service that's required and, pretty much expected by the customers. So the report, the capital efficiency plan, looked at the system, looked at the needs, came up with about $50 million worth of improvements. And the goal of the plan is to spend about $3 million a year to make those repairs as they go. So we looked at 2 different funding scenarios and a new rate structure. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. When we talk about water rates, the first thing we think about is, well, what is the true cost of service, is how they refer to it. What does it cost to really run the system? And then you look at what does that look like going forward, and then how do we fund that, and what does that look like? So first, we have operating expenses. I think that's what everybody thinks of. When you think about the water department, it's the personnel services, the people that work there, purchase of services, things that they have done. General fund reimbursements are that pro rata share of things that are managed as a whole for a town because it's more efficient. But when you start to think about, where the funding comes from, it's apportioning that percent of the employee benefits and whatnot to the water utility. Debt service, there's no debt proposed now in the new plan or for the new capital efficiency plan at this point. And this is prior debt, old debt, which is, starting to come off. So the water mains are the $3 million a year that we talked about to fund the new work. So that's part of the annual budget. And that came from the capital efficiency report. And then the capital, remaining capital, is basically what's left from the town's 15-year capital plan. And I have to say, it's a very well-vetted capital plan compared to some that you see. So putting the numbers to there, and I'm sorry, I'm going fast, but there's a lot of slides in a fairly short time. So putting the numbers together, it's about $11.7 million, the full cost of operating that. So when we think about how to fund that, the first thing we want to look at is look at where does revenue come from. I don't know how many people think about this, but a water department charges rates for service, but they also get revenue from other sources sometimes. This is just a quick breakdown the last 3 years. The most important thing is that almost all of it comes from water rates. There's not a lot of other fees and charges and other sources of revenue for the water system. So it's mostly funded by, or the revenue that comes in is mostly from water bills. So we looked, like I said, at 2 different funding scenarios. The first scenario is I guess, all in, funding 100% of all those costs. That block that we built in the couple slides ago is FY24. It's showing what that looks like. And you can see that the costs are projected for the next 5 years. We don't suggest that you set rates for 5 years, but it's just to give an idea of what we see based on where we are right now. And, okay, so the next thing, I hit that by accident. Next thing we look at, that's the revenue needs. That way you need to recover. So how do you get that? So we either modify the existing rate structure, which you do, you increase them or adjust them as needed, or as Mr. McConerty alluded to, we want to look at a different rate structure for a couple of reasons, and I'm going to tell you that right now. So under the existing rate structure, people are billed either twice a year or 4 times a year, depending on the size of their meter. And most of the meters are in that half a year cycle, which is the smaller meters. And the fee that they pay, of the charge, includes a usage allowance that based on the meter size. And sort of one way to think about it is almost like a water card. It gives you so much usage, you pay for it, but you pay for it whether you use it all or not. So when we looked into it, it was about, it's interesting. It's a very dynamic system here and a very interesting situation. About half of the customers across the range use less than half of their allowance. The other ones use a ton of water and makes up for a lot of the revenue that comes out of that. And almost 100% of the revenue is based on usage, including that part that's allocated and gets used. So the only part that's really a fee or a non-usage based is the part that they don't use, which it was fine. You should have some base revenue that's not associated with usage. The rate structure itself is kind of complicated, and the way it's set up, it's difficult to manage. So, and it isn't necessarily serving, if you think about people, half the people are using less and half the people are using more, there's probably a better way to structure that to even it out. And then lastly, Falmouth's residential gallons per day per capita is at 64 gallons per day as of the last report, the annual statistical report. The state targets 65 gallons as a upper threshold for water usage. And if you go above that, one of the conditions of the withdrawal permit is you have to do these functional equivalents and you have to start doing mitigation because it's more wasteful usage. It's a high amount of usage. So what we looked at for funding this, for actually both scenarios, the rate structure that we're proposing is right now the customers are still going to be billed on the same basis. It'll probably, or it could go to quarterly at some point for everybody. The base charge is based on meter size and it goes up by the size of the meter. And that's considered a best practice, and it reflects the fact that water systems are built on for max day and for large usage as well as the average usage. And this reflects what we call the readiness to serve concept, where I like to think about it as everybody could open everything at one time, and they could tell you it happens at the worst time, but that the larger the service, the more of an impact they have on the system. So it's just a way of apportioning costs in proportion of how the system is designed and constructed. All metered usage would be paid for. There'd be no allowance, which is, a more modern, I think a better approach for it, so that you're not paying for water that you don't use. And using a tiered or an inclining block rate structure, which is also considered a best practice because it can be used to help encourage water conservation. And happily enough, it is one of those functional equivalent measures that the DEP would try to impose on you if that usage goes up that next unit. So it's it's already, you're a step ahead of the game on that case. So the rate structure is a lot of numbers right here. The first upper part of the chart from the annual and the quarterly charges, those go up by the AWWA meter equivalents. They're from the American Water Works Institution. It's a sort of a recommended practice from that, and it reflects the carrying capacity or the capacity of that size because they get bigger by the square. So the first number is set, and then the rest of them go up by that amount. The tiers, the usage tiers, go up by the price ratio, and they're all compared. In both cases, they all reflect back to the first, the smallest size. So under that scenario, the tier 3, the highest tier charge would be 1.5 times what the lowest tier is, that lowest usage amount. And it's a pretty conservative amount. It's pretty tight. You can see them. There's not a lot of specific guidance for that, but you can see them go much higher to 4 and 5 times. So we wanted to start with something conservative that can be monitored and less of a abrupt transition. And then over time, if you need to, you can monitor that and change it as needed. So looking at that first rate structure, the rate structure is the same for both funding scenarios, but for the full all-in funding scenario, we generated what a pro forma looks like and what the revenue would be to match the expenses. And we included the other sources of non-rate revenue there as well. So it's pretty even. There's a little bit of a gap in 27, but so we sort of evened it out by approximating a retained earnings balance, which would probably be more like a stabilization, just to show what that looks like over time. The second scenario for funding, again, same exact rate structure, just different numbers, but this would be funding the operating expenses and that $3 million for the water mains. So those two things would be funded by the water rate revenue. So again, same thing, but if you remember, the last one was 70, this is 38, and I don't remember what the other one was, but it's lower because it needs to generate lower income. One of the things that the advantage to this also is that those fees they generate base revenue that's non-variable. It's not depending on water usage, and you would get charged, that rate, that base charge, whether you're here, whether you're using water or not, because as DPW can tell you, they're there every day ready to go, and just because you're not using water, most of their costs are fixed anyway, so it doesn't help to have it only when it's, water's being used. So the base charge is set up about 30% of non-variable revenue, which is a good for stability. So again, same thing, looking at that. We had a couple adjustments here to try to keep pace. Again, this is an illustration to show you what it looks like over the next 5 years. And then it kind of all comes together with looking at cost impact. So what we do is, because it's hard, right? When you say $3 million a year and things, it's hard to kind of wrap your head around that. So what we do is we pick, for a residential customer, we pick 3 categories of a user. One is your typical residential customer, which to me is 2.5 people using, we pick 64 gallons because that's what you're actually using here, with a 5/8 inch meter. And this is intended to be not an average or not a statistical valid number, but it's like a serving size of what you would think a family might use, or a household or whatever. So looking at the numbers here, the 23 is also based on the existing funding level. It is what the rates are. It's not part of the schema. Going to 24, it would increase, you can see here, for that first scenario would be $206 for a year, for a whole year. Then we looked at a low-usage residential customer, which is one person using 50 gallons a day with a 5-inch meter. And 50, maybe a little generous, depends. That cost, that first year would be a $115 increase, and the second one, $10. And then a high usage residential customer is basically twice what that average uses. So that would go up $500 and $150 under the lowest one. And then to try to give perspective for the larger users, we picked 4 large non-residential users and pulled out the metered usage. It's not necessarily all of their accounts because some of them have multiple accounts and multiple meters, whatever. I picked the larger one to compare to. So we show here what the impacts would be for that under both the existing and then scenario 1 and scenario 2. So that's the next. Okay. Did we go to questions yet, or?
So Mike stopped right there because I think we had, we're going to have a finance director who also worked with our group on this extremely hard. He's going to come up and he's going to have a possible third alternative.
He made me work extra hard.
Of course, got to get our money's worth. So you can see that between the two extremes, there could be infinite number of possibilities that we could try to provide to you, and this is where we would look for your guidance to help us try to figure out what is palatable for the citizens of Falmouth. The lowercase scenario, the one with the lower costs, that's actually within the revenue structure that the water department has now. So if we were to take $3 million away from other capital that's being spent elsewhere in town, you could actually utilize that lower cost scenario. But that's going to bring down our November capital from $8 to $5 million. And I don't know that we want to do that. And then the higher cost would put the water department in the area of an enterprise fund, where it's actually fully self-sufficient, where it's paying for all of its costs, where it would have retained earnings. At the meeting, or the town meeting, there was a slide that talked about free cash and how low Falmouth is versus the rest of the communities. When you look at other key indicators where other towns have retained earnings for their golf departments, for their water departments, and for their wastewater departments, their retained earnings plus free cash plus stabilization funds, it makes Falmouth in the middle of the pack, not towards the higher end, because these proprietary funds like water and wastewater are not contributing to any balances that could help out in a difficult time. So one of the things we're trying to do is get your guidance in terms of where you would like to be, or where you think the town's tolerances are in terms of funding up to $11 million, or potentially allowing for actually funding all of its capital, which would be the debt service plus the capital that happens other than the water mains and the water mains. So how much of that will come from free cash, and we'll take the free cash available to other departments away, or how much do we want to put towards water rates? And again, we could have done 20 more scenarios and been here for hours, but we're trying to get some guidance as to what you think the tolerance is of the citizens, and you may go back to some of your constituents and talk to them about what they feel is equitable. Again, what would happen with the tiered structure would be that those that are higher users, we could swing some of the rates towards those folks and make it more palatable for the low-end users, those people that don't water their lawns. They're pretty basic users. So, we're just trying to get some guidance across the spectrum of where we want to go. The lower end, again, is taking away capital from other departments and their needs, and the higher end does allocate more expense. It would be great over time to get to the water department being able to fully fund itself, but you may not want to do that all at once. So what we're trying to do is, again, see where you want to go across that spectrum. So between 5 and 42% is pretty much where we are.
Questions from the board? Mr. Patterson?
Yeah, if we went to an enterprise fund, all right, then I assume then that the water department would have more discretion to raise its rates in order to operate.
It doesn't matter whether you're an enterprise fund or not, you still would have the same mechanism to raise rates.
Oh, understood, but
Okay.
in terms of the people that are managing the water department, they're going to see their numbers, right? And they're going to say, well, I'm going to have to go ask for more money if I spend too much in this particular part of my operations or capital.
Yeah, I think we can do it either way. One of the things we may do for your, I guess, November rate study time period is look at all your rates. Look at how much your rates should be if you fully pay for a department. So, for example, in another community, we looked at the full costing of that department, whether it's a general fund or an enterprise fund. And they said, for example, the health department, we think 50% of that is related to non-rate activities, and another 50% is related to rate activities. So we're going to cover 50% of the cost. So again, this analysis is an enterprise analysis. This is an enterprise fund analysis. And if it were in the enterprise fund right now, you'd see where the general fund is subsidizing the water department by millions of dollars to keep that or to make that operation go. So we can do it, over time as a non-enterprise fund, and then we could convert it to an enterprise fund, or to your point, we can make it an enterprise fund and then transparently transfer money from the general fund into the enterprise fund to make that fund solvent. So either way.
Mr. Brown?
It looks to me, when I was reading the charts and the graphs, that we're basically going to be having to double the water rates of folks to get caught up with our system and our needs. And I would have to say that my first thought would be that I'd like to fully fund the department, but I'm not so sure about the capital part of it, because historically we've funded our capital through our capital process in November with our free cash or whatever, our capital plan. So I think that would be, at least for the first year or two, I would stay with that. And then maybe as we go forward, maybe we could integrate the capital planning into the water rate, but I don't want too much sticker shock in the first day.
So what does fully funding the department mean? So if you say it's not capital, do they pay for their fuel? Do they pay for their health insurance?
I was thinking of
benefits?
excluding just the capital cost of the water main replacements, specifically that $3 million.
And would you fund it?
Yeah, but not in a capital, in the capital budget in November.
So that's my scenario. So if you're going to fund $8 million in capital in November, that means $3 million is funded for the water department mains, and $5 million for the rest of the town.
Right. That's my first
The
thought.
question would be whether we could meet all the other capital needs.
Right.
If we have 8 and we take 3 right off the top.
And you've been doing between 8 and 10 without the $3 million
Right.
water mains.
I spoke with Mr. Staub. He said this information is going to be available on the website. I assume you'll be available to answer some questions as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yes,
you know
sir.
you're going to get some calls.
Absolutely. Or a lot of visits.
No, you know what? That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because they have to fully understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's at stake. But
And I think the misconception previously was when you just take the top of this, the operating expenses, people were thinking, well, the water department's, giving money to the general fund.
Right.
Well, that's not true. It hasn't been covering its health insurance and, fuel, the insurance for the buildings and the fleet. There are a number of costs that just the operating budget was not covering. So it was not fully funding itself.
And can you give me the percentages again? You said we could go up between 5 and, was it 45?
Yeah, so in the scenario 1, it was 42%, and the scenario 2 was 5%.
Thank you.
So that's the spectrum, and then how much, that percentage will fund water mains, and then the remainder will have to be reduced from the other capital spend for the town.
Mr. Patterson?
Yeah, but it seems to me it's still gonna cost the same. It's just that we don't see it as, a transaction that's limited to just the water department. It's gonna have to get paid somehow or other, right?
Well, it hasn't been. So in 2000...
That's my point, I guess.
2016, there was a rate study which said, I think it was 18%, 12%, and some other numbers over the course of 3 years, and that wasn't done. So when you kick it down the road, the percentages increase. So now in 2023, if the study that was done in 2016 was enacted, we'd be talking about minimal rate increases now. But, so that's been the issue.
To me, making it an enterprise at least makes it visible as what
That makes it transparent.
Exactly.
Yes, it does.
Otherwise, we're just subsidizing it in a kind of a way that isn't obvious.
Yeah, but I think unless you go up to that 42%, you'll be subsidizing it going forward, which is fine. You would be taking general fund money and putting it into the water department. But you would know that. In the audit reports, I think one of them was given from 2010, and they did not report on that since 2010. They will be putting it in their current management letter that shows that water, at least since 2007, has not been covering its costs. It's being subsidized by the general fund.
Question. So do you recommend an enterprise fund either way, or only if we're going to go up to the 40%?
A special revenue fund is another segmented fund that can have subsidies from the general fund. So either a special revenue fund or an enterprise fund, yes. And we're going to hopefully save a few $1 million by the fact that we did this analysis for the wastewater department. And in order to get 0% loans in capital forgiveness, we had to show that even though wastewater is not an enterprise fund, that wastewater has been giving us subsidy from the general fund as well. Otherwise, they wouldn't give us a 0% loan or 2%, because a lot of people that want to give grants, they don't want money going to a fund and saying, okay, that's going to subsidize the general fund. They don't mind if it goes the other way, but they definitely don't want to give you, favorable treatment and have that money go back for other purposes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board or comments? Or Mr. Johnson-Staub, anything you want to add?
I think this is obviously not a small issue, and I wish we had more optimistic news for you. But, I think at the last meeting, you got a pretty clear understanding that we really do need to start investing in water main replacements. So, we can fund that by reducing other capital costs, other capital expenditures from other departments, or we can meet it with increased water rates. I'd love to be able to say, well, we can cut the $3 million down to $1 million, but, we're already looking at a program that's indefinite at $3 million in today's dollars that will need to escalate by inflation. So, we have had very, very low water rates, and we have an old system, and, we've reached a point where we're going to need to make some investments.
Okay. Anything else from the board? Mr. Brown?
Anybody else have other thoughts about whether or not we should include the $3 million in capital costs in the rate?
I certainly don't want to weigh in on this till I get to speak to some of my constituency and see where they're at with it, and give Ed the opportunity to get this information out that can speak to it more succinctly than just this presentation. I trust him a lot more with these figures than I trust myself. So if we can answer what we can and direct the rest to Ed to be able to.
Why I'm here.
And then I think,
the whole
that's
team.
prudent. That's where I'd be on it. I would be unwilling to to make any decision tonight on anything until.
Oh, I'm not talking about voting it, just
Yeah.
curious if the
I'd like-
feedback.
I would like to have a conversation with Ed moving forward before I wade in as well. Mr. Patterson?
My sense from your presentation is that the large users of water carry a larger burden in terms of the total cost and subsidize the people who use less. Is that not the way?
Not currently. No, there's a flat rate. There is no tiered rates.
But in terms of covering the cost of operation of the water department, don't the higher users pay more?
You mean in total dollars versus the smaller users?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. all
But
right.
I don't know if the total, do you recall, Mike, the total dollars from large users versus the residential? I think it's mostly residential.
Right, yeah, by and large, yeah. I mean, the people that.
If you'd come up to the podium, just so people at home could hear you. Sorry. And Mr. Rafferty, you as well, if you want to come up.
Give me answers.
You're correct that the people that use more water pay more than the people who use less water. You know, I mean, that's the design, and that is under the existing rate structure as well. But I would have to refer back to the reports in the tables in the other report to see exactly where the use comes from. But it's basically under the existing rate structure, they're all paying about the same. Even the what I call the first the allowance, like a prepaid water card, it's not that much less than what they're paying for the overage. So, you know, they're basically paying for what they're using.
I understand that in terms of, sorry. I'm trying to drill down here to.
I think I can answer your question.
Because it seems like the larger water users are carrying a larger share of the fixed costs of the department.
Currently, Sam, the way it goes is like this. If you have a 5/8 inch meter, you pay a certain fixed cost, and then you get so many units of water. Every unit of water, which is 100 cubic feet, beyond that, you pay a fixed rate. If you're a larger size meter, your base meter charge and your allowance for water is different. You still pay the same rate for every unit of water you use beyond your allowance. My recollection from when I was running the department is once you get to the 2-inch, the 4-inch, the 6-inch meter size, typically the allowance money, the allowance for each of those meter sizes, they don't go very high above those unless you're like, say, Atria, which is running laundries inside their facility, or the hospital. But again, the homeowner's paying the same unit rate for excess water usage as the large users. So and what they've done here is they've just moved it so that that allowance number goes away. Everybody pays for each unit of water they use at the same rate until they come above a certain usage, which is a higher use. That's the next tier up. Does that make sense to you? So the larger users right now aren't paying more on a unit basis than a regular homeowner.
Can I take another stab at this as well? I believe what we heard is that half of the users are not using all of the water they pay for. And so so the people that aren't using a lot of water are actually subsidizing the people that are using a lot of water. It's the other way around.
Yeah, gotcha.
Am I correct in that? Thank you.
And that's what I was kind of trying to get to. I have the sense that not everybody is paying the same share for the water they're using.
Right, right. So that's one of the benefits of the new structure. Regardless of what the rate is, the new structure is going to have better incentives so that whatever water you use, you pay for it. If you use just a little bit, you pay just a little bit. If you use a lot, you're going to pay a lot. It's a more rational, the new rate structure is a more rational approach that will incentivize conservation.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
I think this just a good reminder that we should be focusing on conservation efforts and doing some sort of initiatives to get people to get rid of those old 5-gallon toilets. A lot of old houses in town that are still using very wasteful equipment. We probably should have some kind of an incentive program to, maybe the town should buy 20,000 toilets and stick them in a lot somewhere and say, if you're willing to put it in, we'll got one for you.
Any other comments or questions?
So,
board?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Am I hearing that you want some more time? We're not ready for a rate hearing on May 22nd, I think is what I'm hearing. You want some more time to get some feedback on the range of costs, and maybe we come back for another discussion, and then schedule a rate hearing from there?
I would like to see that, yeah.
Is that agreeable?
Sure.
I think it's a lot to digest.
It is a lot. It's a
Peter,
lot
is
of
that,
information.
you want to give us some context for the timeline?
Yeah, I mean, I think, under all the information, there's a lot of numbers we've seen here tonight, but I think on all the information that we had, I will say it was a very daunting task for our group, and also Ed Centeo. He, provided a lot of information for this. Yeah, if it's not the 22nd, then we can go on a further date from that. Our goal is, what we're looking to do is in November, to have these water rates, a format come through with the water rates, in November to be able to go in and appropriate some of these funds so we can start. We're already working on the design. We already have a list of priority run projects that we need to get completed. We want to go in November to get appropriation for it so we can start looking at construction in the spring.
That won't hold you up on any contracts that are underway, or, I mean, you can hold it down for a little while longer?
So if you looked at the efficiency plan said 2020 on it. So the efficiency plan is 3 years old. We updated it in '23, and we were looking to come in 22, or in '21, and in '22, and now we're in '23. And once again, as we said about, as Mr. Centeo said about the water rates, we've been pushing this down the road. We've been pushing it down the road, and now we're at a point
We've never had this information this succinctly presented.
Actually, back in, Italian Bond actually had done the reports.
2000, I mean, I wasn't here.
In the past. I mean, we've done these in the past. That I know of, we've done at least 4 in the past. But I think we're at a point right now, we're at a crossroads. If we've spent so much effort and time and dollars upgrading our treatment plants, a new treatment facility, and our other treatment plants in our wells, we need to start putting it into our distribution system that actually carries it from the plants to the households. So if we wait and it comes in after the 22nd, that's fine with us. We can continue it, but we would like to be ready, July, August, once we start getting towards November, so we can look at appropriation. One thing that was mentioned tonight, the possibility of, right now we do, for the residentials, we do biannual billing. And that is because we have 2 staff that goes out and does the readings. We're doing a pilot program this year to see if we can do it quarterly. It'd be much easier for the residents of the town, it'd be much easier for us at Public Works if we could do it quarterly. So we're going to continue that for another year or so to make sure that we can handle it in-house with our automatic reads and our new reading software. Once we can get that done, then we'll look at the possibility of maybe doing quarterly bills for the residential.
So could the board commit to having a hearing in June?
I would.
Yeah.
I mean, we can put it off on the 22nd, but I think what I'm hearing is that we really can't kick the can down.
No, it should be enough time for us to get out there.
Okay.
I have
Mr.
one
Brown?
more thought, too, that since we have been neglecting this issue for a while, and we got quite a list, I imagine, should we be considering a larger project than the 3 million, and maybe there should be a debt exclusion to kick this off?
So what was in part of the efficiency plan last week when it was presented, there's only so many large contractors on the Cape that do the water main work with the distribution work. And usually in the springtime is when they're gearing up for all their projects. They're getting all their projects ready to go. So I think the 3 million will bring us right into where we want to be, and we'll be able to take care of multiple projects. We have them in different areas of town. We'll be able to take care of that'll give us a good start for our phase 1 to get that rolling right now. If we put too much more into it, once again, you might not be able to get the contractors to get that much work done. Across the Cape, across the Commonwealth, everybody's looking to do infrastructure upgrades right now. And, being on Cape, we're basically on an island, so there's not too many contractors on the Cape large contractors that would do this type of work.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Looking for a motion to move that to June.
I don't think we need a motion.
I think I have a consensus of what our next steps are. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very well done.
Thank you to the team.
Okay, authorize water superintendent to amend water usage restrictions as needed based on drought conditions. Mr. Johnson-Staub?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Fairly self-explanatory, as you just read. We do have water use restrictions in place now that were voted by this board last August, and we're seeking two motions tonight. One, to rescind those restrictions, and the second motion would be to authorize the water superintendent to amend water usage restrictions going forward on an as-needed basis to adapt to drought conditions.
Okay. Mr. McConerty?
That's exactly what we're looking to do. So last year, on August 8th, we implemented a water restrictions, and they've been in place. They're still in place currently. We're looking to put those to rest, get that taken care of. So we're getting calls at the water department right now from landscapers and others that are looking to use water. They're planting lawns this time of year, so they're looking for us, and we still have the bans and water restrictions in place. So we're looking to relieve those water restrictions. And then also, as time goes on, as Mr. Staub had said, is that we're looking to just follow the state guidelines. The state declares, being on the Cape, we're in a separate region than from other areas of the state, that they get cleared at different times, different drought restrictions. So whatever is recommended for the Cape, we're looking to follow the Mass DEP and state guidelines. If we do run into, if it's a dry summer and we do run into flow problems or water, that we feel that we're going to need to do water restrictions, we'd like to be able to make those restrictions without have to continually come back to the board on an annual basis.
Any questions from the board?
Nope.
Pretty self-explanatory.
I agree.
Madam Chair, I move to lift the water use restrictions recommended by the Water Department and implemented by the Falmouth Select Board on August 8th, 2022.
I'll second Ms. Scott Price's motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Madam Chair, I move to authorize the water superintendent to amend water usage restrictions as needed based on drought conditions.
Again, Madam Chair, I'll second Ms. Scott Price's motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor?
About public comment, should we?
Do we need public comment?
Not necessarily.
I don't
Okay.
think so.
It's not a hearing.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Nobska Light land disposition, that has been rescheduled. And so we will move on to the Beach Committee mission statement. Mr. Johnson-Staub?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Beach Committee brought forward a proposed mission statement, which is great because they didn't have a formally adopted mission statement. And the chair was kind enough to reach out to me before bringing it to the board so we could talk it over. In your packet is the mission statement. There is one element of the mission statement where I'm recommending a slight revision to what was proposed by the chair and subsequently voted by the entire Beach Committee. And that relates to item number 5. The change that I am recommending is to make clear that when Beach Committee members are serving as volunteers, and I do want to say that this is an incredibly energetic committee that has been a terrific resource to the town, and I really applaud their work and their efforts. My revision to the mission statement is just to make clear that when they are doing volunteer work, so this is not just meeting and making recommendations to the select board or dialoguing with the beach superintendent, but actually out there doing something, then that's under the charter. The operations is under the town manager. So in order to make sure that we're all rowing in the same direction, my suggestion is that the mission statement make clear that any volunteer efforts that are done by the committee members is done with the prior approval of the beach superintendent.
Because they're advisory.
Correct.
But how does that translate to the language in number 5?
So my proposed wording is serving as beach department volunteers under the direction of the beach superintendent.
Right.
And their wording
Volunteers and
was
representatives.
serving as volunteers and representatives for the Falmouth Beaches.
So it's just that number 5.
And
So if I may speak to that, we discussed that suggestion. I took it as a suggestion. We understood where that was coming from, but we want you to understand that with a situation that we have where we do not have in-town, full-time, year-round department staff, there are times that the beach committee is actually going out and serving as representatives at job fairs, for example, or at meetings. And it is always with the knowledge of the department, of the superintendent of beaches, that's for sure. But it is definitely being a representative. I understand the concern. I think we're in a very unusual situation because we don't have someone here full-time that is able to do some of these things, and we see them as so important that we've taken them on. And I will say that to you. That's something to consider, that we are seeing gaps that have to be filled in. We are being extremely successful right now with our change in, I'll say, recruitment, or in encouraging people to apply. That has taken a lot of work by beach committee. So I just...
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do other towns have full-time beach superintendents
Yes.
all year round?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. So I understand, I could see adding the wording with, as per recognition by the beach superintendent. I absolutely have no trouble with that. I just think we have to be realistic of what's going on. And I'm stating, this was to come up with what we really are doing, rather than what other committees are doing, because it is somewhat different.
so, if I could,
Mr.
then,
Brown?
what would be the harm of using their mission statement and numbers 5 saying, serving as volunteers and representatives for the Falmouth Beaches under the direction of the beach superintendent?
Are you stuck on the word representatives?
I'm not, no. As long as it says under the direction of the beach superintendent, I think then we're good with the charter on that. That's fine.
Does that work?
Absolutely, 100%.
So if you put volunteers and representatives
Absolutely.
under the,
Yep.
under the direction
Yep.
of, perfect.
Absolutely. And we would be happy for you to vote that, and then we will accept that as a beach committee. No problem.
Mr.
I
Patterson?
wonder if you could change the word direction to supervision, under the supervision of the beach superintendent. Does that satisfy the charter?
Either is fine by me.
Either.
I think they both express the same sentiment. Supervision is, maybe implies a little closer relationship, but I think the spirit is the same.
I think I
the
like the
direction-
word direction better,
Yeah,
only
because
because she won't be there supervising.
It might be over the phone if it's in the winter.
Right.
And it won't be
Exactly.
precedent-setting.
Right. I think I like it written that way.
Okay, we will.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So, Madam Chair, I'd move the mission statement with number 5 saying, serving as volunteers and representatives for the Falmouth Beaches under the direction of the beach superintendent.
Can I have a motion?
A second.
Can I have a motion and a second? Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to approved mission statement for the Disposable Plastic Regulation Committee. Is that going to be the name of the committee?
Disposable committee.
I'm hearing,
No, they are not disposable.
the name of the committee is at your discretion. I was trying to be fairly literal in terms of what the,
What they voted?
what the committee is charged with doing.
Gotcha.
Right.
Well, the acronym's not too bad, DPAC.
Now you're talking, Sam. Deepak? Okay, you have the draft in your packets. Any questions, revisions, comments about the draft?
I had one. Let's see.
Can I clarify who, so the idea is that they'd present their findings to us and the Board of Health. Who ultimately has the authority to implement anything, or does it depend on what it is?
The
I was
Board of
gonna say
Health
Board
would
of
be,
Health.
yeah, the Board of Health would
Yes.
adopt the regulations.
Yes. And they would adopt them and then enforce, correct?
Right. So what I was envisioning, but this is a good subject to talk about, is the Select Board's appointing the committee, and the Select Board may want to, at least be aware and have an opportunity to weigh in before regulations are adopted by the Board of Health. But we certainly don't want to overcomplicate the process. So I think we want to make it clear that, maybe there's a communication loop with the Select Board, but ultimately, these recommendations are going to be submitted to the Board of Health, and then the Board of Health will take the recommendations, hold hearings, and vote whatever they vote as regulations.
Okay.
And that'll be a Board of Health role, not a Select Board role.
And we have our health agent here. Is there anything that you would like to add or ask us to do, Mr. McGann?
I thought I was going to get away without having to speak, but how's everybody doing tonight? No, there's nothing need to add. I think, we just need half dozen meetings. I think we could hammer out something that would work for everybody, and the board would make it a regulation. Regulations are always easier than bylaws.
They're
right?
not bylaws.
Right. Regulations make it easy because things will change. The world of plastics may change, and there may be better things later on. You can look at it or whatever. So, no, I think it's the way it's written is good.
Okay, so we will put it up on our website, and we will have people, there are two people that I think I've given you the names that are interested, and they will go on and apply, and then we'll appoint, looks like 7 members?
That's my suggestion, yes.
Okay.
And so if we could just make the pitch for anyone who's watching, if you want to serve on this committee, please go to the committee webpage of the town website, and you'll find the committee member volunteer application form. Fill that out, send it in to the town manager's office, and we will schedule interviews.
Perfect. Yes, please.
Madam Chair, Diana Malloy, Chair of the Board of Health, and just want to let you know that the board is very supportive of collaborating with the committee that once it's chosen, and that the process that worked with the Solid Waste Advisory, we felt worked very well, in that there was a lot of communication, a lot of work once they had things drafted and had done some background work, and we worked closely with Alan to get to the point where it was the regulation. So I think that process worked, and I think you have the recommendations that we've gone back with as far as the composition of what we would also suggest to be members of the committee. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I would suggest that we consider the name of the committee something different. How about Plastic Reduction Advisory Committee, or something along those lines?
Plastic Reduction Advisory Committee sounds fine to me.
Yep. Mr. Robinson.
Thank you. Alan Robinson, Chair of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. Speaking for the committee, the statement as drafted by Peter and the team is very much consistent with the recommendation that we would have made if there had been more time to make a recommendation to the board as our advisory committee. I think it's the right approach, and we look forward to partnering with the Board of Health and the health agent and the members of the committee and you all.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so do we want to vote on the mission statement?
I'd move approval of the mission statement with the change in the name.
A second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion amongst the board?
I would just
Mr. Brown?
suggest that once they get formed, they might modify their mission statement, right? Because this is kind of a two-part thing. It's about assembling the group as well as what their mission is. Is this going to be a temporary committee, or?
I believe it will be temporary.
My understanding, and again, so the change of the name makes it perhaps less clear. I think the name is good, but I'm glad you're asking that question, Mr. Brown. So my thought was that this was an advisory committee to draft a regulation. The regulation gets adopted and the committee is done.
Okay, then.
And the health
Yeah.
department.
Yeah, because after that, we would be the enforcement of it, so.
Okay.
Yeah, my understanding was that it was temporary as well. And I think we should vote it as written.
Madam Chair, may I just make one more?
What? Wait, let me just finish. And then if they decide they want to make any changes, they would come back. But I think I heard Mr. Robinson say that he thought it was well-written.
If it's just a temporary committee, I'm not so concerned about that.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it. Yes, Mr. Robinson.
Just because there could be the opportunity to have people apply for membership in this committee is important. At the same time, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee has one vacant position right now, and come June 30th, we're going to have 3, if we don't fill them before, we'll have 3 vacant out of our 7 positions. So we are in really dire need of members of the community to apply to be committee members of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. And while only a certain number of people can be in the committee that's just been formed, if you're a member of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, we'll certainly be discussing this during our meetings, and anyone who's on our committee will certainly have input into the process to develop these rules and regulations.
Mr. Robinson, as your liaison to that committee, is it possible to recruit from this temporary advisory committee for the Solid Waste Advisory Committee? To get them?
Absolutely. Sure.
Then
both.
So you're volunteering to recruit? Okay, good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Sorry, one last point back to Mr. Brown's question. If it's agreeable, I can add to the charge that the committee will sunset once the Board of Health has acted on the committee's recommendation. Just to make it explicit.
I think
that it's
that's a
temporary
really good
committee.
idea. And if they ever had to bring it back for some reason, I think they could, but I think a sunset should be there. Especially, I think we're asking that they bring something back August 4th, at least a report. So
Right.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you
Working on this
all.
project. It's needed.
Okay, we are going to move on to police vehicle replacement policy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Select Board has adopted a fuel-efficient vehicle and idling policy, and this was a requirement for qualification for the Green Communities Program. And that policy states in relevant part, all departments and divisions shall purchase only fuel-efficient vehicles for municipal use whenever such vehicles are commercially available and practicable. So that's what the relevant part of the policy says. The police department has raised several concerns with hybrid patrol vehicles. At one time, the hybrid vehicles were not available for purchase, but recently they have become available. However, there are remaining concerns related to reliability, particularly in connection with the electrical system. Also, the Ford Interceptor has low clearance that has resulted in damage to the hydraulic lines when patrol vehicles were operated on unpaved roads. Captain Brian Lowen is with us tonight, and he has provided in your packet an overview of cost and mileage for several different patrol vehicle options. And the question for the board here is whether we want to make an exception to the fuel efficiency policy. I suppose it could be just considered an interpretation, so that, the question is it practicable for the police department to continue purchasing hybrid patrol vehicles? And there are, the other options that are identified in your packet. One is essentially to continue with the Ford Interceptor, but not the hybrid, but rather the traditional gas version. And that would be the next best fuel-efficient option. And then the other option would be to go with a Chevy Tahoe, which is a much larger, roomier vehicle that has worse mileage and is more expensive.
So let me just ask a clarifying question. So we are looking to make an exception to our policy, or is it the interpretation?
Well, yeah, thank you for clarifying, because initially I was looking at this as an exception, but then as I looked closer at the wording of the policy, I suppose you might look at it as an interpretation. But we have been purchasing hybrid vehicles, and there's certainly a lot of concern in the community about coastal resilience and climate change and energy efficiency. So I did think it was appropriate to bring it to the board so that at least there be some transparency.
I appreciate that. Captain Lowen, go ahead.
As you know, I did 2 patrol shifts with the police department just recently, and this is where we brought the attention to this. And I work in Wareham, and I see these cars at Wareham Ford all the time broke down. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to go on these patrols with these guys and ladies and see firsthand what they're seeing and smelling and some of the trouble that they're going to. And you know, I'm sure Captain Lowen can explain it more succinctly. But I did 2 shifts with them in one day and experienced it in 2 different vehicles on the same day. So if that happened to me on one day, how often does it happen to them through the course of a week in their patrol schedule? So thank you for that.
Thank
I
you.
just wanted to make that known.
Captain Lowen?
I just want to put a couple of things into perspective here. So we have 12 patrol vehicles, 2 of which are supervised vehicles and 10 of which are patrol. And of that 12, 8 of them are of the hybrid model. The other 4 are slated. They're the ones we are trying to replace currently. They're the last gas-powered vehicles, and our experience has been they're the most reliable. Of the 8 hybrids, they've had more trips to Wareham Ford for one repair or another than we care to talk about. The gas is more reliable. We were trying to buy them last fall. Ford had difficulty getting them on the lot earlier this year. They canceled the order because they couldn't get them. Within the last week or so, we were finally notified that they did have them on the lot. So we're kind of in a holding pattern, but reliability is basically the term we throw around the station quite often. Although we haven't gotten to the point where we haven't been able to respond to calls, having 10 vehicles and anywhere between 2 or 3 at a repair shop for one reason or another, we're kind of skirting the edge there of having some additional issues. Fortunately, we have a couple of extra detail vehicles. They're also gas-powered. We end up having to put those on the road at times when we don't have any other vehicle to put on the road for patrol. So again, it's become a reliability issue.
Questions from the board? Mr. Brown?
I would have a suggestion for the policy to be changed to say that police cruisers, passenger vans, and cargo vans are exempt from this criterion until such time as fuel-efficient vehicles become commercially available. However, the town of Falmouth commits to purchasing fuel-efficient police cruisers and vans once they become available and deemed reliable by police department staff. And then that gives them the opportunity to decide when they think that they're up to speed and ready to go, they can go back to shopping for them.
Mr. Johnson-Staub, any? I guess I go back to, and the reason I asked the clarifying question was because I was thinking, okay, is it an exception to the policy or is it interpretation? And I think the way it's written gives them that leverage. I think I guess it just depends on how you interpret it, right? So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed, but I think the way it is written now, I think there is that room.
Madam Chair, you know, we're all trying to save the planet, but there has to be somebody out there in reliable vehicles that are saving the people trying to save the planet. So these guys have to know when they get in the car it's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I brought it to Mr. Johnson-Staub's attention, and I fully support the fact that it helps in turnover, it helps in reliability, it helps in staffing vehicles. Captain Lowen, you're not talking about admin vehicles, though. These are just patrol vehicles?
Just patrol vehicles.
So everybody else that's doing their day-to-day work is going to be in hybrid vehicles?
We've recently replaced one of our administration vehicles with a hybrid model.
Yeah.
I can't tell you when it'll be delivered, but that's been ordered.
But that's the plan?
And that's that's the plan. That's more feasible. They're more feasible for an administrative car, which goes from, point A to point B and parks for most of the day. The patrol vehicles, they're running, 3 shifts, sometimes 24 hours a day, depending on if we can give them a rest, depending on if we have other cars in use or not. So they're constantly running. So it's a different application than an administrative car, a detective car, the captain's car, chief's car.
When you were on patrol, Captain Lowen, how important was it to know that when you turned the key, you could go and you weren't going to have trouble with
Well,
your
that-
vehicle, with everything else?
That's everything to our job, is being able to get from, from where we are to whatever the emergency happens to be.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Patterson, did you have a question?
No, I just want to make a comment. I mean, I think we're all interested in seeing this conservation measures move forward and reducing the amount of carbon dioxide that we're releasing. But this is not the area that's really producing the majority of it. I mean, I think we should be looking at the system and saying, where can we have the most impact? And is it going to, compromise the reliability of the work that's required by that vehicle? So, I mean, to me, it's clear in this case that we need the reliability here, and this is not the place to focus our conservation efforts.
I agree.
Me too.
Totally agree.
Thank you. I think you've given us the direction we were seeking.
Okay. But I want to go back, wait a minute, Mr. Doobie. I want to go back to Mr. Brown's comment. Do you think that we should move forward and amend the language?
I think the language is fine. I think
Okay.
the amendment, makes it clearer that we have some discretion.
I would move that we amend that line where it says become available and deemed reliable by police department staff.
And I do think it gives, adding that language does give the police department a little bit of discretion, a little more discretion.
Just makes it more clear, because if it was
So-
already clear there was discretion, they
Right.
wouldn't have had to come here.
And I agree also with Mr. Patterson. So we have a motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to amend the language in the policy. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Mr. Doobie, what, did you want to ask something?
Yes, I was going to ask some questions, if I could.
And is it about vehicles? Okay, go ahead.
Richard Doobie, Blacksmith Shop Road. I understand the captain's concerns fully. What I am a bit confused by is that I'm a bit of a gearhead, and hybrids are considered by virtually every publication that I read to be far more dependable than internal combustion engines. And there's a number of reasons for it. And I'm not going to bore you with all the technical jargon, but just really quickly, I will tell you that increased brake life, for instance, longer oil change intervals, longer overall maintenance, and that's because you basically have two systems complementing one another. Now, the problem with these vehicles is real, and I fully accept that. But is it a problem with that Ford model? Because it is definitely not the problem with hybrids universally. Hybrids are considered far more dependable than internal combustion engine vehicles. They're, within our lifetime, there won't be any more internal combustion engine vehicles. It goes to the point where probably the most sophisticated vehicles on the planet, Formula One cars, are hybrid cars for their dependability. So is it possible for the department to look at hybrid vehicles other than these Fords that are problematic, and perhaps fulfill both roles then, so that they get a very reliable vehicle, but one that meets the standards that we're trying to establish as far as carbon footprints for the town? Right now, we're just, at least what I'm hearing is, we're only concentrating our efforts on this one model from Ford. And I don't know how old these vehicles are right now, but they might have been in the beginning of the hybrid revolution. Right now, the hybrid is standard. It doesn't have to go any further. It's there. It's for us to use. And there's no performance letdown. In fact, there's a performance increase with the new with today's hybrids. So is it possible for the department to look at other manufacturers than just this Ford model?
Mr. Doobie, I have a question for you.
Yes.
You heard in the presentation of Acton Town Managers that we were looking at other ones. All right, the Tahoes, other towns are going to those as well. But there's also a budgetary restraint to that,
Excellent point, and I'll give you an answer to that.
okay?
My family, we have two vehicles, identical model vehicles, okay, Toyota Highlanders. My wife's is a hybrid. Mine is an ICE. She gets about 40 miles to the gallon. I get about 23 miles to the gallon. Between her maintenance and my maintenance, a huge discrepancy. So the initial outlay, I completely understand what you're saying, is going to be higher. But over the lifespan of the vehicle, just like the lifespan of our cars, there's going to be a huge difference. We paid a lot more for our hybrid. Why we didn't get two hybrids? There was just none available at that time.
The cabin size on the vehicles you're describing
Yeah.
are a lot more restrictive than the cabin size in an Explorer or a Tahoe. And if you've been in one with a computer system and your kit and your gear,
You don't know a Highlander. You're not talking about, it's an entirely different car than what you think.
Okay.
It's a big vehicle. It's a large,
Okay,
and I'm not saying do a Highlander. I'm just saying anything other than this Ford.
Let me allow
Sure.
Captain Lowen to respond, and then I'm going to wrap this up.
I am not a gearhead, so I'll do the best I can to navigate that. So my partner, Officer Oliver back here, he's our vehicle maintenance officer. So he and I went to the trade show 3 weeks ago now, up in Marlboro. And the trade show it's all police equipment as well as vehicles. And you have Chevy, Dodge, and Ford. Those are your three main distributors. And whereas they're all working towards electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, other vehicles, they're not on the market yet. They're working on them, but they're not currently available. I would tend to agree with you, the Ford Interceptor or Explorer, however you want to, that hybrid system historically has issues with it. We're not the only department that's seeing it. We're, talking to, fellow officers around the Cape and around the Commonwealth, they're all having similar issues. So until we have something that can meet our needs, equipment, the versatility that we need on the roadway, we will certainly investigate that. But as far as I know right now, and I could be wrong, there isn't anything out there. So,
Madam Chair, if I could
Yes,
just
please.
add on to that briefly. So what Captain Lowen is referring to is police vehicles are not the same as the vehicles that everybody else drives commercially, whether it's, whatever.
Suspensions.
Bigger
CRV, Highlander, they're built differently because they have better crash protection, and they have all the equipment that needs to be accommodated within, including the prisoner compartment in the back. So that's when Captain Lowen says there are three manufacturers, basically, of police vehicles. That's why it's 3 and not 17. It's because these are specifically designed for police standards and to accommodate police equipment.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain Lowen.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you. Okay, number 7, acting as trustees of the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund, discussion vote on the application from the Falmouth Housing Trust for $500,000 for the affordable housing project on Sam Turner Road. Any questions or comments on this request?
I move approval.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second? For real?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we had Karen here just in case.
Unless you want to come up and talk about it.
No, just in case. Okay, so we have a motion to approve in a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, we will move on to number 8, residential occupancy deed restriction. And Mr. Brown, you had asked that this be put on the agenda.
Yes, ma'am, and I'm not sure of exactly what the status of the legislation is by Mr. Julian Sear, but he has put forth legislation to enable the Vail, Colorado model to be used in Massachusetts. Currently, there's no mechanism to use it. So for tonight, I'm just asking that we would send a letter of support for Mr. Sear's legislation, so that could be considered by the State House or whoever might be interested in hearing our opinion. I'd like to eventually have it be able to be something we might use in Falmouth.
Can I
Yes.
mention that I actually listened to the presentation at the One Cape Conference back in August, and I was pretty impressed with the model because it's encouraging people to actually give up their homes for the purpose of workforce housing, if you will. There's a financial incentive that helps them but also helps the community in providing the essential services for the community. So, I mean, I think it really makes a lot of sense to explore this. I mean, we don't have the final say, but be supportive of it.
What I found interesting was that in Colorado, when they put it in place, the original intent was, so in Vail, Colorado, they have a very similar situation as we do, tourist area, and all the workers were getting pushed to the periphery of town, and they were living in trailers. There was just no more housing left. And so they came up with this idea to try to start incentivizing residential use, means year-round occupancy of the home. And one of the unexpected consequences was, once the regulation was in place, people started using it as a tool to purchase a home, because if the town incentivizes the deed restriction at maybe 10% of the value of the home, that could act as a down payment. So it not only preserves housing as residential, but it offers an opportunity for people to purchase it. So it's got two advantageous aspects.
Yeah, I remember the presentation from One Cape Summit last year as well, and thought it was definitely something that we should look into, so I'd totally support this.
So, do you want to make a motion?
I make a motion that we send a letter of support for Julian Sears legislation to enable the residential deed restriction.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Yep.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda, and I'm going to read the items on the consent agenda. Please notify me as the chair if there's anything you would like to hold. Approve application for a second-hand dealer license, Divine Consignments, located at 419 Palmer Ave. Approve a change of date of approved special one-day all-alcohol liquor license, Falmouth Theater Guild, Highfield Theater, 58 Highfield Drive, Thursday, 5/11/23, previously approved for Saturday, 4/29/23.
That was a cancellation because of illness.
Yes. Okay, administrative orders. Vote to approve request to spend $1,250 from the Rec Department donation account for the upcoming spring dances and purchase ice cream from Sea Scoops. Vote to accept donation from Nancy L. Erickson and John S. Erickson in memory of Jack Erickson in the amount of $500 to the Falmouth Fire and Rescue Department. Someone like to move the consent agenda?
I'll move it.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Mr. Patterson, this is where you shine, one of the many areas.
I'm prepared.
Okay, what do you got? Review and vote to approve minutes of the meetings, public session, April 10th, 2023, meetings 1 and 2.
On meeting one, under 1D, just a sort of an editing thing. This second line says, staff has been engaged in dialogue and Massachusetts DEP. I think the DEP should be defined as an acronym but put the words Department of Environmental Protection in before that. It's just the
Yes.
right thing that technical editors pick up on all the time, but it's pretty easy to just get to using it everyday language and assume everybody knows what you're talking about. And then on page 2, it says, Mr. Patterson made the following motion. Probably should be really moved, and just
Yes.
turn it into an action verb and not made the following action. It's just too many words, it's not necessary. But then, the last sentence, it says, Mr. Patterson, and again, it said moved, we award the requested decreased amount of to the Falmouth Affordable Housing Commission. So just clean that wording up. And the last item is in the next paragraph, starting, well, since then, the Falmouth Housing Corporation has created a limited liability, and it really should be limited liability corporation, and then LLC in parenthesis, because you turn around and use that acronym in the very next line. Just editing things, nothing substantially changing the.
Okay, so with those edits, do you move to approve?
I move to approve as edited and release for public access.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of April 10, 2023, meeting number 1, with its edits. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Patterson, you're up again.
No, because I didn't make this meeting.
Oh, that's right.
We're on our own.
Oh, boy.
It looked fine to me.
Whatever Sam said.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
And release is part of the motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Doug? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of Monday, April 10th, the second meeting. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Patterson, were you not at that meeting, did you say?
It says I wasn't there. and
No,
I-
it was the one that was during the break at town meeting that we did quickly.
Yeah, and I think I got.
Yeah, he wasn't there.
So-
That's right. You got
So
lost.
should he abstain from voting for them if he wasn't there? So it's a-
Fine, I'll abstain.
Yes, thank you. It's 4-1, thank you.
In the past, I think town council has advised us that we can approve it if we feel like it was, but it doesn't matter. I'll abstain. It's not going to change anything.
I can double check that, only because how can you approve it if you weren't, but I'll double check that. Okay, so, town manager supplemental report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and forgive me, I forgot to update the date on my supplemental report. Obviously, it is for this May 1st meeting. The one item I have on the report is to announce the 3 finalists for police chief. So we now have started with a longer list and through a series of reviews, starting with the consultant and continuing with citizen interview panel and consultant-led full-day assessment center. We have now selected 3 finalists, and they are Brian Reed, who is a captain in our own Falmouth Police Department, Sean Doyle, who is a lieutenant in the Falmouth Police Department, and Jeffrey Laurie, who is currently the chief in Westboro, Massachusetts. We will be conducting a final round of interviews. Actually, we did that this morning. And we will now proceed with reference checks prior to making a conditional offer of employment subject to a thorough background check. That background check takes 2 to 3 weeks. So we're still a few weeks away from an appointment decision.
Okay, thank you. And we had 2 of the finalists here with us tonight.
No, one.
Just one.
Oh, that's right, we didn't have Sean Doyle.
Brian Lowen was here.
Okay, select board reports.
Want to go first, Sam?
No, I'm passing.
Okay.
On your last meeting, you're gonna pass?
I'm done, guys. Unless, I'm not even going to tell you.
I thought that cake would sweeten you up a little bit, I guess it didn't work.
You had to give him a fork.
No, you can't have plastic forks. Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
So I did attend the Water Quality Management Committee meeting this afternoon. It was very interesting. Kristen Rathjen, their ScienceWare's representative, did some math on the proposed 300-unit housing, and she reported that, in her opinion, treating to the state requirement, if their packaged treatment plant for sewer treatment, she said the state regulation would call for them to treat to 10%, so she based her numbers on that, even though the developer thinks that they can do better. She said it doesn't make sense to project anything lower than the 10, which is what the state will mandate. So treating, right, 10 milligrams per liter of nitrogen after treatment. Her math leads her to believe that their offer to sewer surrounding neighborhood houses would potentially require them to sewer 237 houses in addition to their 300 that they're building. And then any other phases would require similar mitigation. That's just the first pass at, what does it mean when they offer to, because they offered, I think, 64 or 67 houses, thinking that how their math was looking at it. So the Water Quality Management Committee asked Kristen to take a look at what she thought the numbers were. So there's a pretty big difference there between the two. They also were talking about the potential for reclassifying Quistit Harbor and Megansett Harbor given the fact that atmospheric deposition of nitrogen is much less because of the reduction in the Ohio River Valley. The amount of pollution that's coming out of there is significantly reduced now, and the winds are sort of shifting, so their stuff is not coming directly over us anymore. It's going more to the north. Interesting. So actually, that is helping us improve water quality in an unexpected way. It's likely not going to really change things, but it's interesting that they're paying attention to that. They went on to talk about a pursuit of a townwide fertilizer ban, but I didn't stay for that because they had to come up to this. And they talked about a letter for town meeting members regarding Article 25, just to reiterate their positions. And I also did have a chance to speak with the South Coast Wind representative, Kelsey Perry, just to let her know that, as a select board member, I was reaching out just to let her know that we want to be in touch, we want to hear about what's going on. We read in the paper all the time that South Coast is engaged with Falmouth officials. So I asked her, if we could have like a monthly or even bi-monthly update where we just hear from, because I'd like to know who the officials are that you're speaking with, so I can keep my board informed as to what's going on, because.
Does that make it a factual statement that we are speaking with them by definition, no?
No, well, just to open a line of communication, to make sure that when they have something to share, that they will. Right now, still, they're in a holding pattern, waiting for guidance from the EFSB and the.
I think where part of the rub is, as you heard Mr. Moriarty say, that it's continuously put out there that we're in negotiations with them when we are not.
Well, that's why I
And that's part of
mentioned
the
to her
issue.
that that's part of the communication that I want to develop with them is, who, if you're talking to somebody, tell us. Who are you talking to and what's being talked about? Because if we don't know about it, then that's kind of a disconnect. So that was the important part of our call, was just to say that we would like to be informed, as well as if they're talking to some department head or some committee, whatever it is, we should be informed as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Patterson, are you really passing?
I am.
Okay. Ms. Scott Price.
Madam Chair, I went to the Green Center, the ARC, and talked to them about their ideas for the pilot project that came up at town meeting. And they're very much pursuing funds from DEP and other places to bring that to town meeting in November, which I think is interesting, and ask them just to kind of keep us apprised of how that's going. And, there seemed to be a lot of support for that at town meeting, and might be an interesting project if it is funded as a pilot project. And also, I've spoken to Dave Calhoun from Saxon Partners once since the meeting, and I wanted to talk to him a bit more about exactly what was talked about at the DEP, but I didn't get off work early enough to meet, not DEP, the Water Quality Management Committee. I was hoping to attend that, so thank you for that update.
I forgot an important element of that.
Sure.
Are you finished?
Yeah, that I've been in touch with Dave, and that I was hoping to be in touch with him more specifically about that sewering
Okay.
idea.
I forgot to mention that the Freshwater Ponds Working Group agenda item was on the Water Quality Management Committee, and Kim Comart was there, and he was pointing out the fact that there is sort of a gap in any real agency or group looking at the freshwater
Just to
pond.
confirm, you'd like to call Gavin Bartlett?
Whoa.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So it was acknowledged by the Water Quality Management Committee members that they really do need to stay focused on the estuaries and meeting the state's DMDLs
South African.
and all their different tasks that they already have at hand. They really aren't really positioned to take up a new initiative. And there seemed to be pretty much general agreement that it might be time to form another committee to look at the freshwater ponds. I know Mr. Comart was very interested in that, and the Water Quality Management Committee is going to wait to hear back from the Ponds Coalition, because they're going to meet on May 18th, and they're going to try to form a consensus of what they think they need from a committee on their perspective. And I said, if you think you guys have something that you want to request, send an email to the select board, and we'll see if we want to take it up as an agenda item. And so that's probably going to be coming to us sometime, maybe early June, I would guess, or maybe late May.
Thank you. Just to follow up on two things. I'd like to have a presentation by the Water Quality Management Committee and in combination with Amy Lowell, if we could at some point.
Are you thinking June or?
Yes, not, just to get an update on where they are and what they're doing moving forward. And I spent some time with Michael Stone. He spoke at town meeting, and he was very eloquent and very knowledgeable about wind power and solar, and so he and I spent a good deal of time together. Very, very bright young man. It was time well spent, sort of getting educated.
Okay.
Mr. Zeke?
No, thank you.
Okay.
I'm good.
All right. Future agenda items, I just put mine forth. Anybody else?
I think we're going to have a couple coming up already.
Okay. All right, then. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved.
Second. Let Sam second it.
Okay, I have a motion in a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye. I'm gonna
Sam, we're
hand-
going to miss you.
I'm gonna
as
hand
much
this
as
to
we,
you. Peter?